Kent Reeks stood on the deck of the Empress of Ireland, watching the Canadian shoreline fade into the distance as the ship steamed towards Liverpool, England. It was the start of a new year, one full of hope and opportunity, and he would celebrate his 24th birthday during the crossing. But as he gazed out at the horizon, Kent had no way of knowing that 1914 would bring a war that would kill millions and reshape the world forever, nor that he wouldn't live long enough to witness it. Kent Reeks was born in Australia on 8th of January 1890. He was named after his mother's maiden name. His father, Walter, was Australia's first naval architect, a successful man originally from Liverpool who emigrated to Sydney to work in ship design. Kent had a younger sister, Thelma, born in 1892, and their mother died just 3 years later from a heart condition brought on by acute rheumatism. Walter eventually remarried and went on to design and build a family home overlooking the deep blue waters of Mosman Bay. From an early age, Kent was bright, cheerful, and determined to follow in his father's footsteps. He studied engineering at Sydney Technical College, and by the age of 21, he had secured a position as assistant engineer on the White Star liner Georgic, whose sailing routes included Liverpool to Australia, retracing the same route his father had once taken. More recently, Kent had obtained a new job as fourth engineer aboard a steamship owned by the United Fruit Company of New Orleans, which traded between the United States and Central America. Now, he was en route to Liverpool to sit the Board of Trade exam, an engineering qualification required to advance in his field. He had written to his father to tell him of his plans, revealing his mix of excitement and nerves about the upcoming exam. While in England, he also planned to visit his maternal uncle, Thomas Kent, and Aunt May, who lived in Manchester, as well as his 75-year-old grandmother, Sarah, in Stoke-on-Trent. The ship Kent Reeks was sailing on carried around 800 passengers, including farmers, labourers, picture framers, bookkeepers, musicians, merchants, families, and domestic servants. Some were visiting England, while others were relocating permanently. During the voyage, Kent struck up a conversation with two young English women on board. One of them, 21-year-old Ella Rawlinson, was a stenographer who had been working in Canada and was now returning to her hometown of Liverpool for a holiday. The night before the ship was due to dock, Kent carefully mounted a half-inch Brazilian green beetle bought during a previous trip onto a small silver plate which he pinned to his tie. On Friday 16th of January, he collected his money from the purser, who safeguarded passengers' valuables during the crossing. Ella Rawlinson was with him at the time and noticed how carefully he counted the cash inside the envelope the purser handed over. It totalled an enormous $500, equivalent to around $16,000 today, or £12,000. He then tucked the money into a dark green wallet. On the morning of Saturday 17th of January, the ship docked at Liverpool, a bustling industrial hub known for importing raw cotton that would be woven into cloth by thousands of workers in the mills of Lancashire. As he disembarked, Kent took out his wallet and checked his money again in full view of several other passengers. He left his suitcase at a storage office, then helped carry Ella Rawlinson's luggage, walking with her to St George's Crescent, where he saw her into a taxi. Kent then took a taxi himself to the Empire Hotel in Lord Nelson Street, a temperance hotel that served no alcohol and was popular with performers from a nearby theatre. He inquired about rooms and, finding one available, booked it for 3 weeks before heading out to collect his suitcase. While he was out, another guest arrived at the Empire Hotel, signing the register as J.H. Ramsden of Chicago, Illinois. The mysterious traveller would play a key role in the unfolding events, though his true origins and intentions would remain unclear. 90 minutes later, Kent returned with his luggage, then travelled to Manchester to visit his Uncle Thomas and Aunt May, returning to the hotel at around 11 p.m. The following morning, he breakfasted at 8 a.m. and passed the rest of the day uneventfully. On Monday 19th of January, Kent left the hotel in a hurry at 2 p.m, carrying a brown paper parcel attached to a leather strap. He left his luggage behind and told the hotel manager he'd be back in a couple of days. But after he stepped out of the doors of the Empire Hotel, Kent Reeks never returned. The following morning, Tuesday 20th of January, was crisp and cold. A little girl named Elizabeth Hutt was making her way across a disused mining area in Ettingshaw in the market town of Bilston and the city of Wolverhampton, which was then in the county of Staffordshire but now falls within the West Midlands metropolitan county. Old mining shafts were dotted around the rough, desolate landscape, scarred and pockmarked by industry, and Elizabeth clambered over mounds of frost-covered, tussocky grass, carrying some breakfast for her father, a labourer who had started work much earlier that morning. On her way, she noticed a man lying on the ground near a mine shaft, about 80 yards from the road. At first, she thought he was asleep, but as she got closer, she realised he was lying in a pool of blood. She ran the rest of the way to her father's workplace, and one of his colleagues went to fetch the police. Police Constable George Felmingham of Staffordshire Police was first on the scene. He found the man lying on his right side, with the collar of his overcoat partially covering his head. When the constable adjusted the collar, he saw that the victim's face was caked in dried blood. The man's left hand was partially inside the left pocket of his coat, and his hat was missing. Rigor mortis had already set in. Next to the body, officers found 4 spent .32 caliber cartridge cases. A few feet away on the ground lay a distinctive green beetle tie pin. It appeared the man had been killed on the spot, as there was nothing to indicate he had been dragged or dumped, and no evidence of a struggle. The post-mortem revealed the victim had been shot 3 times in the head, with 2 bullets penetrating the forehead and 1 at the back of the skull. The upper part of the eye sockets had been destroyed, and the absence of powder burns or scorch marks indicating the shots were fired from a distance, likely as he was either falling or already on the ground. In the man's right trouser pocket was £9, 2 shillings and 7pence, worth about £1,200 today, and in his left were 3 American cents. Elsewhere on his person were a gold watch, a silver chain, a fountain pen, several English and foreign postcards, and a photograph of himself in naval uniform. There was also a letter addressed to Mr. Kent Reeks from his grandmother, Sarah Kent. Now investigators had a name, but even more questions. How and why had he ended up 90 miles from his hotel in Liverpool? Why had he left in such a hurry the day before? Who would want to kill the cheerful 24-year-old ship's engineer who was just days away from taking the Board of Trade exam that could have propelled his career forward. And what was in the brown paper parcel he had been carrying when he left the hotel, which was never found? Police considered whether the nearby pit shaft might hold any clues, so with the help of an expert, they erected a scaffold over the mouth of the shaft. The specialist determined that the water at the bottom was around 80 feet deep, and the air was unfit for breathing. Investigators lowered an electric lamp by cable to just above the water level and used grappling hooks to drag through the flooded shaft, but no clues were found. Draining the shaft was deemed too costly and time-consuming, but officers remarked on the oddity of the body being left so close to it. The brick structure now stood well over 6 feet in height, but had only recently been extended upwards to prevent people from accidentally falling in. This led detectives to wonder, had the killer somehow lured Kent Reeks to the site with the intention of disposing of his body down the shaft? Perhaps he hadn't been to the area in some time and was surprised to find it taller than he remembered, giving him no choice but to leave the body beside it rather than throwing it in. The next day, Kent Reeks' Uncle Thomas travelled to Bilston to officially identify the body. He told police about his nephew's visit on Saturday evening, noting that Kent had spoken about the 2 young British women he had met aboard the ship. Kent had also mentioned he was staying at the Empire Hotel and was excited about his upcoming exam, after which he intended to return to Australia. He made no mention of visiting Wolverhampton or any other parts of the Black Country, a region colloquially named for the black smog and fumes of its industrial activity. Kent had shown his aunt, uncle and cousin Muriel the $500 in his wallet. None of this money, nor the wallet itself, were found on or near the body. Several other relatives were contacted, but none had heard from Kent or expected a visit. The tragic news took 2 days to reach Australia, devastating the Reeks family, who could not understand why anyone would have wanted to harm him. Police checked the Empress of Ireland passenger manifest and began trying to trace anyone Kent might have spoken to after disembarking. At the Empire Hotel, manager Catherine Stanton showed officers to his room where his suitcase still sat, waiting to be collected by an owner who would never return. Strangely, they also found a piece of paper bearing the hotel insignia with the name J.G. Parsons written 8 times in Kent Reeks' handwriting, or at least handwriting very similar to his. There was no J.G. Parsons travelling aboard the ship with Reeks, nor in the period prior to his arrival or following his disappearance. The only real lead was J.H. Ramsden, the traveller from Chicago who had checked into the hotel on the same day as Kent. Staff described him as a seafaring man between 5'10" and 6 feet tall, clean-shaven, with dark hair, dark eyes, broad shoulders, eyeglasses, a bowler hat, and a distinctive swaying walk, described as a sailor's roll. Although he claimed to be from Illinois, none of the staff could say for certain whether he had an American accent. Manager Catherine Stanton recalled that Ramsden and Reeks first met over breakfast on Sunday 18th of January and had sat at the same table talking about the docks. Later that morning, around 10:30 a.m, the 2 men had left the hotel together and returned at 3 p.m. That evening, they were seen reading together and said they planned to meet again for breakfast the following morning at 8 a.m. No one knew where they had gone during the day. On Monday 19th of January, they had breakfast as planned, then Ramsden left the hotel while Kent returned briefly to his room before heading to an appointment at the Engineering Academy on Castle Street. There, he met with an official named Mr. Parry to arrange his exam, presenting his references and discharge papers. Afterwards, he went to a solicitor's office to swear an affidavit, as required by the Board of Trade Regulations. Kent told the solicitor he was going to the Midlands with a friend, then sent a similar note to Mr. Parry, stating he would be back on Thursday 22nd of January. At midday, J.H. Ramsden returned to the Empire Hotel, settled his bill, and told the manager he was going to Leeds, about 70 miles to the northeast. An hour later, Kent Reeks also came back to the hotel and remarked, "Neither Mr. Ramsden nor I will be back for tea." When Catherine Stanton informed him that his acquaintance had already left, Kent seemed surprised. He told her, "I may be back tonight, but I'm not sure how long my business will take me. It might be 2 or 3 days." He hurried upstairs, packed a brown paper parcel attached to a leather strap, and departed. It was the last time hotel staff ever saw him. The conversation implied that Ramsden and Reeks had made plans to go somewhere together that evening, and that Reeks hadn't expected Ramsden to leave without him. But Leeds lay in the opposite direction from where his body would be found the next day, in Ettingshaw near Wolverhampton. What had induced him to travel there was a mystery. Police issued a public appeal, and a reward of £100 was offered for information leading to a conviction. They scrutinised all telegrams and phone messages sent to Wolverhampton and Birmingham between 19th and 21st of January and tried to trace the missing money in case it had been exchanged for sterling. A description of J.H. Ramsden was circulated extensively, and ports were monitored in case he tried to flee the country, but there was no trace of him anywhere. It was as if the secretive traveller had vanished, or perhaps he'd never existed at all, at least not under that name. One witness reported seeing 2 men alight from a train at Ettingshaw station on Monday night, one of whom matched Kent Reeks' description. The station was less than half a mile from where his body was later found, strongly suggesting his companion had been the killer. More leads soon materialised. That same night, 2 seafaring men with strong American accents had entered the Lime Street Telegraph office in Liverpool, close to the Empire Hotel, and sent telegrams to Wolverhampton, stating that they would be arriving with a friend. Meanwhile, 3 live revolver rounds were discovered a little further from the body, apparently misfired. These rounds were marked with the letters U and L and were a different type from the spent cartridges found near the victim. Staffordshire police learned that 2 men had recently purchased .32 caliber ammunition from a Liverpool dealer. The sale included 50 soft-nosed bullets and 50 solid projectiles, both suitable for a semi-automatic pistol. The dealer described the rounds as unusually powerful for their caliber, explaining that soft-nosed bullets are designed to expand on impact, inflicting more serious injuries. One of the men had reportedly joked, "They would tickle a cat, wouldn't they?" A chilling remark in retrospect. He matched the description of the elusive J.H. Ramsden. The American accents and the use of high-powered rounds suggested that at least one of the suspects was American. After all, Shootings were rare in England, and few British criminals, especially common street thugs, had knowledge of such specialised ammunition. The circumstances felt almost like a planned execution. Had these men specifically targeted Kent Reeks and followed him off the ship to his hotel? Or had it been a chance encounter triggered by the discovery he was carrying a large sum of money? The fact that his $500 had been stolen while his sterling was left untouched seemed to support the theory that the killers were American and they intended to sail back home imminently. £9 was a significant sum and would have paid for approximately 50 nights at the Empire Hotel, including breakfast. Surely a tempting amount for any thief. The inquest was held on 10th of February 1914 at Bilston Town Hall. In his summing up, the coroner said, "This is a most mysterious case. The police are unable to find any firm trace, either of the man being in company with anyone here or being here at all. They know nothing about him from the time he left Liverpool till the body was found. You can have no doubt, of course, that it was a case of very cruel murder. He was shot 3 times, either when he was on the ground or when he was falling." The jury returned a verdict of willful murder by person or persons unknown. Sadly, Kent's father and sister were unable to reach England from Australia in time to attend the funeral. The press speculated that the murder might have been the work of a gang of sharpers, card cheats who could have spotted Kent displaying his banknotes and decided to follow him. Such a gang had been operating in the Leeds area, consisting of 4 or 5 well-dressed men. One member, skilled at profiling potential targets, would select a passenger boarding a train from Hull to Leeds, then signal his confederates who would board the same carriage, posing as strangers, and engage their mark in card games designed to fleece them of their money. But card sharpers were fraudsters who lured their victims into gambling scams, and they rarely led them to remote places or resorted to violence. The case inevitably grew cold, and police never traced the missing dollar bills or the enigmatic J.H. Ramsden. No one by that name appeared on the Empress of Ireland's passenger manifest, nor on any ships arriving at Liverpool in the previous year or sailing shortly after the murder. One J.H. Ramsden of Chicago was mentioned in the Detroit Free Press in 1916 as manager of the Oakland Car Company, attending a meeting at the Pontiac factory, but there's no indication this was the same man. Could the killer have deliberately adopted the name of a real, respectable person he knew back home? Other theories grew wilder, with some suggesting that Ramsden had remained silent because he was gay and had tried to initiate a sexual relationship with Kent Reeks, which was illegal at the time. Others wondered if the green beetle type in Kent wore was meant to identify himself to someone he had arranged to meet in England who had never seen him before. Some may even wonder about links to organised crime, particularly given Ramsden's apparent connection to Chicago, known for gangsters and gun crime. Or could the fame and wealth of Kent's ship designer father be in any way connected to the killing? Each offers a tantalising possibility, yet we remain none the wiser. It was also unclear where Kent had obtained his $500 and what he intended to do with it. The mystery was soon overshadowed by the outbreak of World War I. In an interesting coincidence, the ill-fated Lusitania was torpedoed by a U-boat in 1915, an event which helped bring the United States into the conflict. Kent Reeks had sailed on the Lusitania a few years earlier in 1912. The Empress of Ireland, the ship that had brought him to England, would also sink in 1914 with the loss of over 1,000 lives in one of history's worst maritime disasters. Intriguingly, Captain Henry Kendall, who commanded the Empress at the time, had previously been involved in the arrest of murderer Dr. Crippen in 1910, when he spotted him behaving suspiciously on board and alerted the police. In January 1915, Kent's sister Thelma gave birth to a son, whom she named Kent in honour of her brother. The Reeks family home has since been replaced by a block of flats, but several of Walter Reeks' yachts still survive, including the Boomerang, built in 1903. By the end of his career, Walter had designed and built around 300 vessels. Though Kent never had the chance to surpass that legacy and become a world-renowned naval engineer like his father, it's important that his short life is remembered, despite the fact that the true story of his final days may never be known. You've been listening to Prash's Murder Map. Thank you so much for supporting this show. Whether you've been here from the start or have just joined, I truly appreciate it. Make sure to rate and follow the show wherever you listen to podcasts. It really helps others find me. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell so you'll know as soon as new episodes are released. I'd love to hear your thoughts on today's case, so share them in the comments. I'll be back soon with another true crime story.